Well, hello everyone, MrWarrenHayes here. It is Thursday, February 16, and we are going to review the worst AEW Dynamite of all time. The one that is, that's it, we're done, and the one that is sinking the ship. The one that is sticking the nail in the coffin. The absolute worst episode of wrestling that has ever occurred across all forms of pro wrestling, geographically, in time and space. Nothing comes up worse than the February 15 edition of Dynamite, or at least, if you believe most of these great wrestling minds out there. You know, I had a nice little meta set up. You know how I like to start these? You know, I'm getting into a routine. I've been doing these for a while now. And I had this nice little meta where I was going to sit down here and I was going to talk about, I had it all planned out. I have my notes right here. I have literally my notes right here. Talking about Thunder Rosa coming back, you know, and I wanted to talk about, you know, her returning and the backstage meeting that they had where she made amends and all that. And I wanted to give, you know, some thoughts and insights, but no. Instead, we have to contend. We have to reverse engineer this horrible discourse around an episode of Dynamite where everyone is running around like headless chickens, claiming the sky is falling. You know, Chicken Little. There we go. We're continuing down the headless Chicken Littles. It's not even Chicken Little going around saying, hey, you know what? The sky is falling. They're headless. Now, Warren, how are they going to say anything if they're headless? Look, I'm not saying my analogy is perfect. I'm making this up on the spot. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. I'm mad. It annoys me. It's this discussion, this microscope under which AEW lives, exists, persists on a week-to-week basis is absurd. All because it does not conform to a way of making pro wrestling on television that has been systematically on the decline for the better part of 12 years. A way to do pro wrestling that is not creating new fans, that is in fact taking people away from the product, from any type of wrestling. If they're not doing it that way, they're failing. And look, we get a shit episode of Dynamite. Look, was last night's episode of Dynamite the greatest one of all? No. Was it an excellent pro wrestling show? No. We have been on a strip of excellent shows with a little misstep in between. Tiny little misstep. But we have been on a strip of excellent shows. We did not get a match of the year candidate like we've been having over the past couple of weeks. We haven't had like these 4-star, 4.5-star insane matches moving forward. No, we didn't have any of that last night. So no, not the greatest. Was it a bad show? No. And what it felt like a show that's building up a pay-per-view, which is happening in a couple of weeks now, 2 weeks, something like that. Why did my voice do that? Why did my voice do that? Probably because I'm mad. In 2 weeks, we have a pay-per-view. We got to start putting shit together, right? The main event is set. We're setting other big matches. And here is the thing. Tony Khan finally turns around, does a Dynamite, and finally does a Dynamite where there are stories. And that was the focus last night. Stories. Not the wrestling matches, not the 5-star grapple shows that people are going to look at and go, oh, this is just for move nerds, this is just for wrestling nerds. No, finally we do things with the stories. Everything was connected last night. Everything advanced stories, kept advancing stories, creating stories, and now we've got people going, well, everything sucked, the wrestling stuff. Like, I don't know. I honestly don't know what wrestling fans want. But on top of it all, I promise you, I believe that everyone who bitches about AEW doesn't even watch it. I believe they don't. And the people who do watch AEW and comment that stuff they are not professional wrestling fans. And they can't wrap their brains around the idea of a wrestling show putting on wrestling in a different way than what has been presented to them by a singular company, by a singular man's vision for over 2 decades. And the argument they will constantly bring up is, well, WWE's been successful. It's the biggest promotion in the world. And they're not wrong. But WWE has spent the better part of 30 years convincing us that what they do is not wrestling. It's sports entertainment. They make movies, pal. So then when we're presented with a professional wrestling presentation, an alternative, something different, they can't wrap their heads around it. And this is all that's left for them to do, is to poke holes in everything. And instead of focusing on the good stuff, and we're going to have a couple of instances here of just a couple of details that people are going to focus, zero in on. And they're just going to let everything go to the side. Again, was this a perfect show last night? No. But there are weekly wrestling shows that systematically put out worse programming than what we got last night. And they don't get this level of scrutiny. They don't get this level of turn. And when I get negative, let's just flat out say it. When I get negative about WWE, I get accused of being a shill. I get accused of being, you're just a freakazoid, because that's the new thing, right? That's Ariel Helwani's gift to the wrestling world, to wrestling discourse, right? You're just a freakazoid. You're an AEW sexual. You're biased. The fuck yes, I'm biased. But I'll tell you why I'm biased. And it's not necessarily a question of AEW. I don't care. If there is one thing that I have always said and I am consistent on, and anyone can go back and find every single instance I've said this, and I have been true to this from the start. I will never, ever stick up for a wrestling company. It's never about wrestling company. It's about the talent, and it's about what you get as entertainment. I've said it multiple times on the Mr. Warren Hayes show, and this is why I do this here. AEW Dynamite right now is my favorite weekly wrestling television program. It caters to me, professional wrestling fan Warren Hayes, and on a weekly basis, there is no one who does it systematically better. No one that has a television show on national cable in the United States of America. No one does it better. And that's why I talk about it, because it is a professional wrestling show. And that's why I want to talk about it. That's why I pick it apart. That's why I do weekly reviews. And it's not an AEW that, I love AEW so much. I love pro wrestling. And it just so happens that AEW is delivering the version of pro wrestling that jives with me. It's not rocket science. I don't give a shit on what side of the fence you fall on. It's not, this is not a tribalistic war thing. This is a question that I ask to the people who don't understand or who always have something shitty and to say about an episode of Dynamite and always find fault, and they're always moving the goalposts. What the fuck do you want out of your wrestling? Because if what you want is weeks upon weeks of community theater, of the same story being told again, but with just slightly different dressing, and just moving things aside a little bit. If that's what you want, there is a promotion for you out there. It's called WWE, and it's got everything you need. That's exactly what you got. But if you want weekly professional wrestling, you want wrestling matches, you want things that make sense, you want things that are booked like a wrestling show, there's multiple other things. There's multiple other stuff. Look, if New Japan had a live weekly show, not unlike this, I'd do the same thing. I'd do the same thing. I'd be sitting here doing a New Japan review on top of it all. This isn't a question of tribalism. This is a question of what I prefer. And it is my show. It is my channel. So no, I'm not going to sit here and pick apart 7 hours of programming that doesn't appeal to me. Because you know what? There is 2 hours of programming a week that just hits all the right notes for me. Sometimes harder, sometimes softer. Last night was a little softer, but I get it. And I still understand it. And it still makes sense. And it's still pro wrestling. But when I lose my mind when I see people, peers, or even folks that I would consider to be, above being my peer, like true success stories, looking at this, breaking it down and saying, wow, AEW, man, in the mud. AEW, what going down the tubes, hasn't been good. Off of one fucking show. And I have said this before, and I will say it again. What we have to blame here, is reaction culture. It's this idea that you have to jump onto something and immediately have an opinion, instead of taking the time to just sit back, look at whatever happened and just let it sink in, let it breathe in, create connections in your mind. Take the time to just assimilate something and then come out with, can you imagine Roger Ebert coming out of a movie theater and hopping on Twitter? No, the guy goes down, he sits down in front of his typewriter back then. He's not reacting, he's thinking, he's pondering. He's making sense of what he's seeing. This is why I do these on Thursdays. I'm not doing instant reactions. Again, I don't have a problem in and about itself with instant reactions. Everyone can do whatever the hell they want. The child of reactivity culture is this. It's just people going, this sucked. And there is no thought process, nothing that brings it all together. There's no room for reflecting, for putting a little extra legwork. I say there's no room. There is room, because y'all are here listening to this right now. I would... This is not a condemnation of instant reaction shows, post shows. I've done them. I'd do them again. It's not the point. The point is that there is also, that this fosters a culture in which everyone has to have a reaction right now. Everyone has to react. No one thinks. No one ponders. No, you have to react. You have to think fast. Think on your feet. Quickly, tell us what you think. This, of course, is a generalization. Because there are moments where you can just outright react and go, wow, this is great. Wow, this is terrible. I think if more people took the time to think back at what happened in relation to what happened in the previous show, or maybe try and see the path that is laid out before them, maybe I wouldn't be starting my AEW Dynamite review, which I love doing. Maybe I wouldn't be starting it screaming at the top of my lungs. I'm not screaming at the top of my lungs. My voice cracks when I do that. It gets really, really irritating. More so than what I'm doing right now. But I really don't know what fans want anymore. Like, I really don't. I don't know what the general wrestling fan wants. I know what you want. You listening, you watching here on youtube.com, listening on my podcast feed. I know what you want because you're listening to me right now, which is an indicator that whatever I'm doing is meaningful to someone, and that there is an audience out there. Maybe not the biggest audience than if I were here, where I was sitting here and we were discussing, Cody Rhodes and Sami Zayn, perhaps main eventing night 2, going through all of those. But there are oodles of podcasts who do that. And right now, I think there's a lot of fan talk and the analysis on certain things when I'm in regards to Sami Zayn and Cody. There's a lot of fan discussion. I think the analysis is pretty simple. I think people are overthinking it because WWE has created fans who overthink pro wrestling, because it can't just be about going into a ring and settling a difference. It has to be much, much more convoluted than that for us to get us to care, right? It can't just be, I'm excited to see these two excellent pro wrestlers kick the shit out of each other. No, that's too basic. There are podcasts out there. There are people on satellite radio who will give you everything you need on that level. What I strive to do here on this review, on the Mr. Warren Hayes Show podcast, is talk to wrestling fans who enjoy the sport of pro wrestling, who enjoy the art of pro wrestling, whichever way you want to approach it, who have sensibilities that are awakened by things like AEW, like New Japan, like Ring of Honor, like the indie circuit, and who aren't going to sit here and, try to, to explain Bray Wyatt lore to me. Again, no disrespect. It's just something that does not interest me. And I know I'm not alone. And it is difficult for me to judge a WWE show, a wrestling show, or purports itself to be a wrestling show, on any other level than as a wrestling show. So I can understand why WWE fans have difficulties wrapping their heads around something like AEW. I understand it. And that's why I don't cover WWE on a weekly basis, and it is not a question of me picking a side. It's a question of, what do I want to talk about? What do I want to cover? Because then what happens? I sit down and I watch Raw for 3 hours, and I come back and I sit down here and I do a review of a show that I found miserable. And then what's the natural reaction? Warren Hayes never has anything nice to say about WWE. He's always bitching about it. Well, then don't ask me to review it. Just like if you're not into AEW, don't fucking watch it. And here's another tip. If you don't watch AEW, which I suspect a lot of people do, I suspect a lot of people don't watch it and still comment on it. Just don't say anything. Just be quiet. Just be quiet. Let the fans watch it. Let the fans talk about it. Let the adults talk about it. And go back to running, go back to running your WWE engagement account on Twitter. Man, I'm so sick of this. I am so sick. So what we're going to do here today, and this was an episode that was conceived for people who say AEW doesn't have stories. This was made for them, and yet they're still not happy. I'm happy. I got to watch AEW on February 15 from the Sames Auto Arena in Laredo, Texas, in the United States of America. That's what we're going to start talking about right now. First of all, before we get into it, throughout the evening, we got a few updates to the Revolution card. There's probably more that are going to be announced on Rampage, so maybe by the time you listen to this, if you listen to this past Friday, it'll probably be old news. But of course, we have the main event. MJF defending the AEW World Championship against Bryan Danielson in a 60-minute Iron Man match. We have the Guns. We're going to defend the AEW tag team titles against the Acclaimed and 2 TBA teams. We're going to talk about that, of course. Samoa Joe versus Wardlow for the TNT Championship, and Hangman Page versus Jon Moxley in a Texas death match. Let's get to this show. I've ranted enough. 8-man tag team match starts off the show. The Acclaimed, along with Billy Gunn and Orange Cassidy, defeated Jay Lethal, Jeff Jarrett, Satnam, Singh, and Sonjay Dutt. Show, of course, starts off with a little tribute to Jeff's father, Jerry, who passed away. One of the all-time greats, last of a breed, legitimately last of a breed of wrestling promoter, wrestling mind. Anyway, Anthony Bowens here in the match gets a famous early on. Power slam by Max Caster. Sonjay Dutt does some fantastic annoying stuff. What a fantastic mid-card annoying shit heel is our boy Sonjay Dutt. Just fantastic stuff. The heels work over Billy Gunn here for the majority of the match. And then the Guns show up to sort of, create some angst, some confusion. Satnam Singh cleans house here. He actually eats a famouser by Billy Gunn, which I think probably one of the only times we've seen Satnam get knocked out, right? Or, knocked down, taken out. But that happens despite the fact that Sonjay is the legal man, so everyone is out. Sonjay is the only guy around, and he's been avoiding getting into some true-to-form action. And then we get a sequence where all the baby faces try to do a scissor me timbers attempt on Sonjay until Bowens finally lands it. It was a crowd pleaser. It was fine. I mean, there was as far as, my personal taste, this didn't do it for me. I thought it was fun for what it was, but it wasn't, not your explosive AEW Dynamite debut, but got the crowd into it. Orange Cassidy doing his thing. It was fine. Nothing great, but fine. We go backstage. Actually, we go to a pre-tape. Bryan Danielson, who cut a promo after last week's match. He's got all the blood caked all over him still, and he's cutting his promo. He's sweaty. He's pissed off. He says MJF can't last the hour. Nobody has the heart that he himself has for pro wrestling. This was fantastic. And you know what? Old man Bryan Danielson is really growing on me. And it's just something that I'm like, I really like, how he's just leaning into the fact that, he's old, he's tired, he's beat up, but, he's got the gaunt, he's got the elongated face, the gaunt cheeks, and he's all busted up, and he's just looking wild man. And that's when, and to me, I'm looking at that, and I'm like, this is a pro wrestler, right? That's when people say, he doesn't look like, so-and-so doesn't look like a pro wrestler. Man, pro wrestlers can look like so many things. That's why I keep hammering this home. Like 2 decades of one company running the show. And you create this image in your mind. But I'm looking at this and I'm like, look, this is also a pro wrestler. And one that I find extremely convincing. One that I'm like, I believe everything this guy's saying. I'm into it. And we got the Texas Tornado tag match where the Blackpool Combat Club duo of Claudio Castagnoli and Jon Moxley defeated Preston, Vance, and Rush of the La Facción Ingobernable, which we're starting to call LFI, which reminds me of a band. Anyway, I'm going off course. I've been off course enough. We need to talk about this show. Match of the night. Adam Page is backstage watching this match, 3-quarter position. I'm like, no, stop it. No. Don't do this. Match starts in the audience as the Ingobernable boys ambush our BCC fellas. There's a suplex over the barricade by Claudio while Rush beats up Jon Moxley. Another part around the ring. They brawl on the floor for a while until they finally get into the ring. Jon Moxley beats down Preston Vance, but Rush comes to the rescue. Get a spine buster by Preston Vance, and I'm glad that he's sort of he's taken that as part of his his very powerful moveset. Castagnoli with a flying European uppercut. Moxley sort of blows a catapult on the floor. That's all right. This shit happens. What are you going to do? Preston Vance spears Moxley through the ropes onto the floor. Onto Castagnoli and Rush in a great spot. The heels start working Castagnoli's shoulder and they double team Moxley. And they do this during the commercial break, right? They do this great spot where they're both putting, they're stretching Mox. They have basically they're both pressing their feet up against Moxley's chin, one guy on either side, while pulling on his arm. Again, one on either side, like a pro wrestling rack, like a pro wrestling torture rack. But it's not the torture rack, you know what I'm saying. Preston Vance cracks Moxley with a chain across the head. He's bleeding, by the way, is John, right? Because it's a Jon Moxley match. Vance also gets busted open. Castagnoli finally gets back up, starts to wail on Vance with the chain. A cutter by Mox. Discus lariat by Vance. And this has to be driven home more and more. We have to keep hammering this home that he's using Brody Lee's discus lariat, right? We have to keep hammering that home. I love it. German by Roosh follows in a Saito by Castagnoli. Jose, the assistant, runs in, chair shots Castagnoli. It's all fair. No DQ. But Wheeler runs in and drives him away. Castagnoli counters a pescado with an uppercut, which is always a great sight. Moxley wraps the chain. What a great finish. Wraps the chain around Vance's neck. Does the hammer and anvil elbows. Then transitions, just floats over, puts him in a choke with the chain, or I should say chokes him with the chain and locks in an armbar. I'm like, what a fucking great finish. Of course, Vance taps out. Great finish. Fun little match. This was the guys worked hard here. I'll tell you what. Preston Vance here worked harder than anyone in this match. Because the dude knew what spot he was in here. He understood what spot he was in here. Like, look, I'm still on the basis of my singles push. And I'm in a match with, top guys in the company right now. Moxley, Claudio. I got to shine here. I got to go. And he did. Holy shit, did he deliver. What a great finish and some great work by Preston Vance here, who really did shine. I found his work was tremendous. Just great stuff. Want to talk about great stuff? Jim Ross sat down with to have an interview with Wardlow. Perfect. This is also the best way to use Jim Ross, for being honest. This was excellent. Wardlow is there. He's talking about his relationship with his father. And he said that they had a good thing, a good relationship going until he was about 8 years old. Then his father left. His father came back into his life when he was a young adult. But when he came back, and he came back and he had stage 4 cancer. Wardlow had already started training to be a wrestler at that point, and Wardlow, said he said his dad made it to his first indie show, and he was proud of his boy. Fortunately, his father passed away, and Wardlow initially grew out his hair and beard because that's what his dad did, and they were showing pictures of itty bitty Wardlow with his dad, who had the fucking wild man look. It's like fucking Bruiser Brody. So why are we saying all this? Because this leads into the fact that Samoa Joe cutting his hair, Wardlow's hair, a couple of weeks ago was a massive sign of disrespect by Joe. Because Joe knew this story while they were a tag team. I'm not inventing this up. This is all stuff that was said. So Wardlow is taking this very personally. Look at this story. Let's underscore this. Story. The snipping of the hair seemed so random a few weeks ago. And this is something that we are not used to in this type of storytelling with this company, is sometimes you will get an answer for an angle in a few weeks. And this is not a main event angle. This is not something that is at the top of the card. This is a nice upper mid-card feud that they have here. We're not going to pretend that this is, top 3 stories of the company right now. It's not. It's fine. It's doing what it's supposed to. Just took us a couple of weeks, and now it all connects. You're like, holy shit. So that's why he did it. Just simple. Not a big production out of it. Not a big to-do. Not an 8-minute promo to carry us through this. Digestible. Easy to follow. Great. Story. And Wardlow, in this promo, flexed some major superstar muscle here. Well-spoken, affable, charming, relatable. I was subjugated. Look that word up. Subjugated. Listening to this guy talk, how natural he was. Maybe they retook a couple of things. Like, this was a pre-tape. It wasn't like, who gives a fuck? If your end result is this great, wonder what the bad cuts look like. Big outing for Wardlow here. Gave us something that we have not been used to, we have not seen from him yet. And that he has massive star power appeal. And he can do it. This was very good. Let's go to another match. Mark Briscoe defeated Josh Woods. Fun little match. Mark Briscoe's in control. Ari Daivari and Toni Nese are around the ring as well, because these are all the team. Now, I don't know why everyone's like, well, what team is Ari Daivari on? What's the name of the Trustbusters? When is the last fucking time you saw the Trustbusters? And Ari Daivari's been hanging around these dorks for a while. And it's crazy to me how people get so bent out of shape out of these mid-card acts that should be reshuffled and shuffled around until something works. Am I disappointed that the Trustbusters have been pulled apart? Yes. Because I thought the Trustbusters were the weirdest stable. And it's weird in a sense that it could all work. And I said, people go, this doesn't make any sense. Why are they all together? Who fucking cares? This is a curtain jerker act. These are your lower mid-card dudes. You're overthinking it already. But this is what happens when you've had years upon years, hours upon hours of programming of professional wrestling, where all you got was nonsensical angles. And, we tell stories, pal. We tell television. You try to make the connections because if they're telling stories, then all of this should make sense, right? From top to bottom, and then you're picking everything apart. This is an opening angle act. And this is a curtain. These are jobbers. They're supposed to lose to the stars. Who cares? Anyway, Nese and Daivari get involved in the match while the referee's distracted. The Lucha Brothers, surprisingly, run in for the save on Mark Briscoe. And frankly, I could not think of a better trio right now. Can you imagine? These three crazy people. Like, I'm actually more into this than Death Triangle, I'm not going to lie. I think Pac should be off doing his own thing. I think Pac should be a world championship contender. I like this more. Anyway, suplex off the apron by Josh Woods, and the Shining Wizard follows. Briscoe gets back in control with some redneck kung fu. Cannonball senton off the chair in the ring, over the top rope. Just fantastic stuff. Mark's like, yeah, you know what? We're still going to go crazy. Hits a razor's edge. A J Driller is avoided into a chaos theory by Woods. DVD followed by the Froggy Bow for the win. This is what we're going to be doing with Mark Briscoe moving forward. I'm completely into it. He got the graphic last night being all elite. I'm happy. Happy for Mark. Happy that there's going to be some sort of good denouement for him in all of this. We can have the discussion about whether or not this should have happened before. Probably on the Mr. Warren Hayes Show podcast. Good little squash match. If you want to call it a squash match. An enhancement match. Renee Paquette is backstage, and she's having her own sit-down interview with Adam Cole. Says he feels great and he loves being back on the road with AEW, and he's learned to celebrate the small victories, like being able to look out of his right eye without it twitching and, driving without throwing his guts up, all that stuff. It's very sincere, a very sincere Adam Cole. And then that's what's bugging me. And I'll tell you why. Because it's so very much, I'm so happy to be back kind of thing. I'm excited to get back. I'm listening to this, and I'm listening to this with Kristen, and we're both sitting there and we're going like, wait a second. Adam Cole he's being too sincere here. Don't get me wrong. He can work this down whichever way he wants. He came out to a huge reaction a couple of weeks ago when he had his surprise return and cut his promo, and everyone was thrilled for him. He is a legitimately nice guy, a guy that everyone really likes. Everyone was very happy for him. But they're driving this home so hard, Adam Cole, happy to be back, and he's being so cheery and smiley, but he's not overdoing it. Like I said, he's very sincere about it. He's all, rainbows and sunshine right now. But I cannot put it past Adam Cole, the character, as opposed to the human, right? Adam Cole, the character, to pull a dick move on us. And I think he's setting us up for disappointment here. I think he's setting us up. Because he's sent a couple of things. He's talked about a few things in code here. I feel like there's a lot of chapters to my story that I haven't been able to explore yet. What does that mean? And he says he looks at and he's putting over the roster. Look at the roster. He says it's stacked, So he knows he has to be as prepared as humanly possible. When I hear about Adam Cole getting ready for a fight, being prepared, I have to be on top of this. I'm thinking he's got something up his sleeve. Being prepared means having backup, having friends to watch his back. And Renee sort of tries to get him to say, oh, who do you want to fight, Adam? He says, I'm not going to name names, but it's going to be good for AEW and good for Adam Cole. And that to me is the bell whistle. That's the one, the bell whistle? What the hell? The whistle. Not the bell whistle, the canary in the cage, if you may. He's being too sweet. He's being too affable, too likable. I smell a swerve. I think Adam Cole has something up his sleeve, and we are not going to have we're not going to have the next few months of a top babyface Adam Cole. I really don't. Story. Next, we have an MJF promo. Takes his sweet time coming to the ring over the quarter-hour commercial, and he's taunting the audience. He tosses a dude phone away. He throws a drink to a dude's face, whatever. He's doing just some fantastic asshole stuff, because that's what he is, right? He says Danielson has no idea how much these fans loving him pisses him off, because not too long ago, these schmucks, used to be devil worshippers. But he knows these people are disgusting, fickle little monsters. There's the fickle. He hates Danielson because he has these people convinced that Danielson is better than MJF. Is it because, and he asked the crowd, is it because he entertains us the best? Or does the coolest maneuvers? Or is it because he puts on 5-star bangers? And by the way, saying banger now is a heel thing. We're just going to put that out there, right? We know this. I've been calling for it to end. Taz called it to end. So, if MJF is using it, then you're using it, you're a heel. MJF says, you know what? You get into the business for one reason only, and that's become world champion. And last he checked, the only way you're the best in the world is if you're the man holding the AEW World Championship. something that Danielson has never accomplished. So he hypes up the match, says Danielson's going to give him a run for his money, and never underestimate how good of a basic promo this is, because MJF will never outright bury a guy. He will always, he'll say, like a good heel should, will still put over the guy in certain ways, because he's saying, he's going to give me the hardest match of my life. He's going to put everything he learned in all of these international countries where he's wrestled all over the place, Mexico, Japan, so on and so forth. Says he's going to put this all to use. So he's putting over Danielson regardless. But then he says, look, if you don't take my word for it, that I am better than Danielson, that I'm going to win, then maybe you should listen to a man that Danielson considers his mentor, Christopher Daniels, who comes out, hands him the mic, and he says, Chris, tell us the truth about Bryan Danielson. And Daniels says, full disclosure, MJF paid me a shitload of money to talk shit about Bryan Danielson on national television tonight. And he has the envelope and he says, basically, he's not going to do it. He says, if there was a time in my life that I would have happily taken the money and buried Danielson for hours. Yeah, probably when you were gone from TNA, am I right? But he puts over Danielson. Says he watched the Dragon win King of Indies in AEW in 2001, which directly inspired the creation of Ring of Honor as a promotion. And Ring of Honor brought real pro wrestling to a fan base that was starved for pro wrestling at the time, not unlike 4 years ago when AEW popped up. I'm telling you. So if there wasn't a Ring of Honor, there might not be an AEW, and there would definitely not be an MJF, is where he's coming to. Daniel says MJF is just a fraud. Says Danielson will out-wrestle and expose him, but before he can finish, MJF attacks him, slaps the microphone out of his hand, then slaps Daniels in the face as he tries to leave. Daniels tells him not to disrespect him again, and MJF kicks him in the no-nos. Locks in the salt of the earth. Danielson runs in for the save. Again, look. Story upon stories here. As we're digging into the past, remember, the canon of AEW is wrestling canon. It's history. So we're digging up the past. We're bringing things up to surface. Sorry, y'all, you didn't have wrestling packages showing AEW showing Bryan Danielson winning an APW. You have that. Then again, look at what Daniels does. He preys off of MJF's insecurities, because the minute he calls him a fraud and he says that he's going to be out wrestled and exposed, that's when MJF gets aggressive. That's when that pushes him over the line. And this has been MJF's thing, his insecurity. This is why he puts wrestlers through these gauntlets, these wrestlers who he knows deep inside could overcome him, that are better than he knows. Danielson is better than him deep inside, but MJF is insecure. He needs to, that's why he talks a big game. That's why he pretends to be who he is, like putting on airs, showing that he's money, and he gets torn down quite frequently. That just makes him angry. It makes him madder. That's why he transitions from being smiles and goofs MJF into something a little more sinister. That's when the claws start coming out. It all makes sense. It all makes sense if you watch the show. If you watch the show, this all makes sense. But if you're following bloggers, tweets, GIFs, you're just going to sit back and you're going to be like, same thing as usual, same thing. Whereas we are getting true character progression. All of this makes sense in MJF's character. Sorry, he's not standing there emoting and talking at a pace to make sure that everyone understands that he is the AEW World Champion. Look, guys, I don't understand how anyone does not see this. We're willfully blind at this point. I don't want to, but what? I will have much more respect for you if you just come out and say, I do not like this, as opposed to trying to try to intellectualize why this is not working for some reason, because maybe it's not working for you, but it is working. And it is there. And maybe you're just like, you know what? I need more QR codes. That's fine. That's fine. This is very solid, logical, consistent, compelling storytelling. I don't know what to tell you. The Guns cut a promo about how they're the World Tag Team Champions and whatnot. Look, we're going to talk about something that doesn't work for me in a second. Jack Perry defeated Brian Cage. It was one of these, another one of these big man, little man matches. Look, the match was what it was. I thought the match was fine. You know, the idea was to, Jungle Boy to get a win over Cage was this enormous guy. Of course, the more Cage loses, the less he comes off as a threat, right? I think we're at a point where it's like, oh, Brian Cage, he's going to toss him around, but Jungle Boy's going to win. They're not in the same lane. So it's not even a question of, oh, he has to overcome. Like, they didn't necessarily bill this as, oh, he has to overcome the Juggernaut or whatever, the Swolverine. It's not even that. Jungle Boy eats a crazy ass Alabama Slam at some point, like a sit out Alabama Slam. Jesus fucking Christ. The buckle bomb and he does. Jungle Boy does this diving splash, and not a diving splash, a tope con hilo, right? But Cage catches him back first on his shoulder. It's like wham, just like he's catching a sack of potatoes. Jungle Boy lands, back first on his shoulder, and no one's collapsing. It's just good little spots, fun little match. Didn't outstay its welcome. And the match was not the match was not the thing. It was the setup for the angle, where after the match, Jungle Boy is heading back, and Christian Cage arrives, and he pepper sprays Jungle Boy. Son of a bitch. But then it doesn't end there. Christian removes the sling and hits a kill switch on Jack. He is healed. He is ready to go. Now, let's take a minute here. I'm going to take a wee little victory lap. Couple of weeks ago, I was right here on this very review, and I was lamenting the loss of Jungle Hook. I was saying it was a bad idea, but I was like, you know what? Why would they be doing this? Right? They didn't start a singles run for Jungle Boy to toss him back into a tag team for sure. So what did I say right here? I said this is probably an indication that Christian Cage is getting ready to come back. He's almost ready to go. I said that 2 weeks ago, right here. Right here. That I felt it was a signal that Cage was going to come back. 2 weeks later, he's back, he's healed, and we're probably getting this match at Revolution. And here's the thing. We're all going to talk about how there's no story, the wrestling sucked, sprayed green paint on black trunks. We're all going to talk about this bullshit, whereas Christian Cage made his return. But we're going to set that aside. We're not going to talk about that and how good of a surprise it was, because no one was seeing that coming except for your boy Warren Hayes 2 weeks ago, best D-list podcast with the A+ audience. Never forget that. But no, we're gonna talk about we're gonna talk about all sorts of other garbage, right? We're gonna focus on on basketballs and the nuts. That's what we're gonna do, right? Talk about top guys doing comedy. No stories, by the way, right? Christian coming out of nowhere. That doesn't mean... Another story. And we're going to look back at the Jungle Boy, his thing, and how this was handled with Christian Cage's injury once that happened. And we're going to look back on this and we're going to be like, you know what? This was well booked up until this point. Kept Jungle Boy relevant in the mix. You look back at everything since Christian got injured and the plans got derailed. Renee Paquette is backstage with the Gunn Clubs. They're talking about the Gunn Club's first big title defense is going to be at Revolution. I mean, and this was, I hate this. I hate it all. I hate it all. Now, if we want to talk about something that is indeed bad, this is bad. Now, if you've listened to me before, you know I don't like title matches being defended in multi-person scenarios. You know, 4 ways, 3 ways, triple threats, fatal fours, whatever the hell you want to call them. I don't like it. Give me one-on-ones. Now we're going to have... The match was essentially set up to be the Guns versus the winner of a Battle Royal next week and a Battle Royal after that. And it's going to be a 3-way. But then the Acclaimed arrive and say, we're cashing in our rematch clause. I'm like, oh, what a slippery slope we're on here, folks. Ooh la 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 la, no. And we're making the Revolution match now a 4-way. And if you are going to do contender matches, right? If you're going to do a tournament, a battle royal, you know, to set people up for a championship match against your champion, just have one person go through it, right? Have one person do the tournament or the battle royal. Why are we doing 2 battle royals to add 2 teams to another team? Why is this... Why are we contending for a multi-man match with contendership matches? If you're doing a contendership match, then you should have one contender. Like, this in and about itself, I do not like. I think it's dumb, especially since it's leading us to a multi-man match, which I don't care for. And now the Acclaimed are adding their thing in. This was all a little too convoluted, and it's a little too much. And I don't know what they're trying to protect here, but I'm going to tell you one thing. If you were to tell me 4 years ago, when AEW started, that the tag team division 4 years from now was going to be reduced to a little bit of a joke, having more multi-man defenses than anything else, no real... and that the tag team situation would be this, and we'd be getting 4 ways on the pay-per-view, I wouldn't believe you. Because when AEW started, the tag teams were an attraction. It was something that they had banked on. They say, you know, this is going to be the home for tag team wrestling. And you can easily argue, that for a long time, they weren't wrong. What the hell happened to the tag team division at this point? And it cannot just be because the Bucks are in a trio. There's too many talented tag teams to even be considering this. You know, they started doing one of the things, another pet peeve that I really don't like, throwing 2 singles guys together into tag teams. I've never been a super fan of that, especially when you have established tag teams like the Bucks, like the Lucha Bros, like FTR on your roster. I don't know, man. I'm sure the match will be fine. I don't think the Guns are great workers. I think the Acclaimed are fine. Who are going to be the 2 others? Who are going to be the two other tag teams? Or are we going to throw the Lucha Bros in there to sort of give it some oomph? Why would you waste the Lucha Bros on that? Why would you waste the Lucha Brothers on a 4-way match? I don't know. I still need time to process this, and I'll probably have full thoughts once this battle royal nonsense comes to a close. I can't do this. I'm telling you, everything that has involved the Gunns has been a complete turnoff for me. I can't get into it, guys. I'm sorry. And the Acclaimed is fine. And I've put them over. I've put over how great of an act they are. Even though it's not for me, I can see that it is for tons of people. They are over as hell. It's not for your boy. But I can appreciate the act and how over they are and how it's all on them and the work they put in and a true AEW success story. It's not for me. The Elite cut a promo about NBA All-Star Weekend because they like the basketball. And AR Fox and Top Flight pop in asking for another match on Rampage. They do jokes about balls. Matt tosses a basketball in Cutler's no-nos. And we have a rematch on Rampage. And I like it. If you have the match, fucking run it. Rerun it. Look. Why would you... They're doing the same thing over again. We're not sitting around watching Jinder Mahal versus Baron Corbin for the 6th consecutive week. This was a fantastic match that we got last week. Why not do it again? Do it again. Run it at the pay-per-view again. I don't give a shit. This was great stuff. Did you hear that this is another complaint at the Elite? I'm going to be talking about this on the podcast on Tuesday because this is, news, regarding Kenny Omega's contract, and the Observer's coming out tomorrow, and Dave is probably going to have been fed a bunch of information regarding this. And so, there's going to be a lot of talk about, I'm sure. But, now the thing is that everyone said, the Elite should leave AEW because all they're doing is comedy spots. Do you not think that this is... do you not think that this is kind of what they're going for? That this is what they want? Are the Jacksons and Kenny Omega teaming together like new to people? Is this a new thing? I swear there are people who don't watch the show. I swear. Adam Page defeats Kip Sabian. I'm going over on time here. I'm going to speed up a little bit here. Again, okay match. Nothing really to talk about. I thought Kip Sabian got his shit in, was fine, but got lariated and dead-eyed by Adam Page for the win. And a dead-eye, not the buckshot. His secondary finisher did the job here. So again, I keep telling you all this, but this is important. This is the concept of lanes. Kip Sabian is not on his level here. I forgot to mention that Kip Sabian earlier in the evening attacked Adam Page backstage with Butcher and the Blade, right? Because he probably paid them off to do it, whatever. To sort of weaken him up. And even though Adam Page got beat up previous, he just came out here and he took a beating, but eventually just ended up destroying Sabian, and that's fine. It's not that deep. After the match, the Blackpool Combat Club come in. Moxley gets on the mic. And here's another thing. Where's Bryan Danielson? Why isn't the BCC looking out for him? I swear, people don't watch the show or have the memories of, worse than a goldfish. Because I've been told recently that goldfish actually have a pretty good memory as opposed to what the common saying is. BCC and Danielson have always been a bit iffy. They've always been a bit at odds, right? Don't you remember? Danielson was like, getting into Yuta's face and Yuta into his face, and Claudio was trying to keep the peace. And there was, you don't have to be breaking up for there to be tension. It can be tension. But most importantly, why would you start adding Danielson into this stuff and the BCC into Danielson stuff and start muddying the waters unnecessarily? Streamline, clear storytelling. And you know what? Maybe it's a question that, I watch And a lot of people who watch New Japan, maybe, or not just New Japan, but Puro in general. I mean, it's like factions exist, groups exist, but they're not always running out to cover each other's back. The Bullet Club is one thing. A couple of weeks ago, I watched on a New Japan show, Yo take out Hiromu after the match, working his leg, beating down on it after the bell, while Shingo and Sanada just stood around, who are all in the same faction. And Shingo at some point starts going, he comes down next, Yo's got fucking Hiromu in a figure 4 on the floor, and people are trying to pull him apart. The Young Lions are in there trying to pull him apart, and Shingo he walks up and he's pointing his fingers going, hey, you gotta stop doing this. No one's putting the boots to Yo. No one's, you know what I mean? Maybe, look, again, it doesn't bother me half as much as it bothers other people, clearly, but the basic principle here is that we're not muddying the waters. Because then what would be the thing? Why is Danielson getting involved in Mox's thing with Adam Page? And vice versa, right? No, this is unnecessary. I swear, there is no winning with people sometimes. Did you know this would happen? I know you know, because y'all are smart. Anyway, Moxley gets on the mic, says Page got his ass pinned last time they fought, and there's no chance he will ever beat Mox again. So, as far as this issue that you feel we still have, let's just let it go. Page says he's not happy with the result of their last match, and he doesn't think Moxley is happy about it either. Mox had hoped that Mox said that, I kind of hope that you'd have some friends to talk you out of doing this bad decision, talk you into a smarter decision, but Emo Cowboy ain't got no friends. Cue the Dark Order coming out. Not much of a reaction, not until we got into the thing here, where Evil Uno is pumped. He's pissed. And he gets right into Mox's face. Hangman is telling him, no, what the fuck are you guys doing here? Get the hell out. And even Evil Uno shoos Hangman away. He goes, no. I got this. And he goes right for Mox. And he's saying that these boys have got Hangman's back for 2 years. And Evil Uno is not afraid of Mox, and he pie faces Mox. And that got a reaction. Fired up Evil Uno in a suit, looking good. Moxley grabs the mic and challenges Hangman to a Texas death match of Revolution. We've already talked about it. Just purposefully looking right past Evil Uno. Fun little segment, and look what we got here. More story. Oh my God. Get some build. Next week, John Moxley is going to beat up one of Hangman's friends. Going to make an example out of him. I don't know. Again, what do you want more out of your pro wrestling? You don't have to overthink it. You don't have to overthink it. Jericho Appreciation Society are interviewed backstage. Talking about Ricky Starks. Daniel Garcia is going to fight him on Friday. I'm going to say this is a misstep. I think this was I don't think this was the good call. I think Ricky Starks should have been on television this week. And I think he should have been all piss and vinegar at the Jericho Appreciation Society doing the shit that they did with the gauntlet last week. I think he should have been here being mad as hell. Pre-tape, backstage, in-ring, whatever. I think even in-ring would have been a good idea. I think this is soft. I don't think this is I think this is a misstep. I'm still excited to see the rematch, which is of course going to happen at Revolution. You're living under a rock if you think this is not going to happen. But I really think Ricky Starks should have come out, guns blazing, mad at the world, do one of these things where it's like, whoa, hang on, Starks was not supposed to be here, and he's just like he hits the ring and he grabs the mic out of someone's hand, and he knocks a dude out. You have, I don't know, have Ari Daivari trying to cut a promo. And then Ricky Starks runs in knocks him the fuck out, gets the crowd up on their feet, and he's fired up. He's mad as hell because the Jericho Appreciation Society cheated their way out of a match that he wants. This was soft. Didn't like it. However, I liked Stokely Hathaway cutting promo of the year while dressed like he's a member of the Black Panther Party. Jesus, like, what was that? It's fantastic, and he's got a cast on, and he is legitimately the greatest shit heel promo manager. Manager promo. Let me say that again. He is the greatest shit heel manager, as far as his promos go, that I have heard in a long time. And he's always been good, but I feel he's getting even better every time. And he's dropping names that he's talking to all these, all these luminaries of the black community, Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, Angela Davis. He says Hook should be fired, and he hopes that AEW management will take notes because his arm is in a cast now. He's a freak of nature. And I don't know, Tony Schiavone is a goddamn professional, because I don't know how he's not losing it listening to this guy. And we find out that Hook has been suspended pending investigation. Nothing like running the angles you know. It's like writing a novel. They say, write about what you know. Then we get the main event. Ruby Soho defeated Britt Baker and Toni Storm. Cage match is being particularly brutal on the results here. I think it's unjust. I don't think it was. Look, like I said, nothing on this card was like a fantastic, great breakthrough match. We had a fine, well-worked tornado tag team match. And you know what? This match here, there was no slow moments. These women worked hard telling the story they had to tell here. There was a plan to begin here. They planned a fan where Toni Storm and Saraya threatened to spray paint an L on. They're still doing the NWO stuff. But the story here is, whose side is Ruby Soho on? I don't think it was the best executed match. I think it was a little sloppy in what it was trying to do. I think they were trying too hard to convey the story over the match. Because when the match was a match, there was some great stuff happening. Britt does the spinning pedigree now, which I think is great. Toni Storm, gets in there. Toni Storm is a fabulous worker. Gets a huge kick in. Ruby Soho gets Germaned out of the ring. Swinging neck breaker by Britt. I don't understand why people don't like Britt. I really don't. Is she Manami Toyota? No. Is she Jamie Hayter? No. She has developed into such a solid worker. I don't understand. Ruby Soho off the ropes with a punch. Right into a punch by Toni Storm. Locks in a cloverleaf, a lockjaw at the same time by Britt Baker on Ruby Soho. Saraya gets involved, takes out everyone. It's no disqualifications, right? Because it's don't call it a triple threat. Then they do the painting of Toni Storm's ass for the hip attack. Oh, it looks like she farted. Oh, and this is the shit that people are going to talk about for a week. And they're not going to talk about any of the story development, and they're going to pursue this tale that AEW doesn't have stories. They're going to pursue this narrative while focusing on, well, we couldn't even see the spray paint. Maybe she should have had white trunks. Who gives a fuck? Was it a poorly constructed idea? Sure. But is this what you're going to focus on? This is what you're going to focus on. Other than the fact that we had the women in the main event of Dynamite. There was no title involved. It was to advance this story, this big story for the women's division. Ruby Soho gets the win. Again, not the greatest thing, but I'm going to tell you one thing. I'm starting to lose faith on this Saraya stuff. I'm starting to think she's a bill of goods. I think Toni Storm Toni Storm's the worker. She's in there putting in the reps. She's solid. She's smart. I think in a lot of ways it shows that Saraya hadn't done this in years. Starting to doubt that this was a proper path. There have been more misses than hits when it comes to Saraya, and I've been tempering my expectations. Like, look, and she hasn't done this for a while, and I am willing to give her the benefit of the doubt. I think she is a name. I think she has value. There is value in the Paige Saraya name. But right now, I think there is a lot of damage that's being done to that aura. I'm not confident. I'm wondering what she can provide. Because there's nothing she's doing here that is outlandishly special, and that could not be anyone else on the roster. I don't know, man. I'm not too keen on how this worked out. I like Ruby Soho still in the middle of it all, but look, it's a big time angle for the women, and Toni wants to give it importance. Main event spot. Let's go. Am I going to sit here and tell you all the ailments of AEW's women's division have all been cured? No, it's not what I'm saying at all. But clearly, he has hopes for this. I do. As someone who wants improvements in the women's division, I want this to work out. Little convoluted, little sloppy. Not sure this was the best resolution. Ruby, she needs to tone down the emoting. There's a lot of little things, and when all the little things sort of come together, you're like, then it becomes like a gelled thing, and you're like, but we're getting stories. I'm gonna wrap up this review. Leave a like if you haven't already. Subscribe if you don't mind me being mad. Hopefully, I will be in a much more joyous position next week. No, but look, always remember one thing. Criticism comes from a place of love. True criticism always comes from a place of love. You will never talk about things that you despise. I do not like eating snails, so I will never review snail dishes because I think they're terrible. I've had them once, never have them again. But I'm not going to sit here and review snails because I have no criticism to bring. I don't like it. That is how y'all should approach things. Criticize out of love. Observe the good. Criticize the bad. Hope you all have a great rest of your week. I'll be back on Tuesday for the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. Leave a like, subscribe, all that stuff. I'll see you next time.